funny story, one of my second jobs was I followed Sherry out of one of her jobs. So she had a job as the marketing director at the Pensacola News Journal, and she went on to be like the vice president of marketing at Baptist Hospital. And so she opened up a space, and even though I'd never been one, I decided I should apply. And so I was fortunate enough. Well, first of all, let me just say, don't ever follow someone really good. It was not easy, okay? So it was one of those first life lessons. I was like, so did you like her? They're like, she was marvelous. I was like, oh, darn. So anyway, but eventually it was a little bit of a learning curve, but eventually I learned how to do the job. Different than Sherry, but they didn't let me go, so it was all good. So welcome to Friday. Is this like the best way to spend a Friday, huh? Right? The whole time I kept thinking, I wonder if I could convince everybody, let's do it again next Friday too, you know? I mean, this is a very inspirational way to take you into the weekend. So it really is, it's quite fun. I want to say when I got here, I was so excited because that was the first time I've ever heard Emily speak. And she's like the coolest person ever. And the whole time I'm thinking, we're both wearing coral. I'm like, she and I are alike. We're both wearing coral. And that was pretty much where the likeness ended. So I will say this, though. I totally agree with her about the whole thing about decluttering your life, and I'm really working on that. And you know, there's that lady on television that talks to you about declutter. What's her name? Yes. Okay. Yes. So I did this. So last weekend I did this. I wanted my day to start. So I go in my closet. My closet has way too many clothes, and it goes way back to a shopping thing I had when I was in retail. I got a good discount, and I had to save my husband money. What can I tell you? But anyway, so my closet has too many clothes in it, and I was determined that every morning it stresses me out because when I walk in my closet, I was stressed out, and I don't need to be that way. And so I am going to declutter my closet to be feeling better. And so I did this last weekend. I was pulling stuff out. Well, she makes you thank your clothes when you put them in the bag. So you do it. So you take it out. I don't know if you watch this, but before you take the clothes, you hold them tight and you say thank you. And then you put them away. I think it makes you feel okay about, so it's like you don't want them to feel rejected. So you thank them, So I got all the way to this thing that still had the tags on it. And I didn't know what to say to it. I was like, I didn't know. I was like, I bought you. I thought I was going to like you. It just never worked out. The tags are still on. I'm sure someone's going to love you. I feel like they're going to be so excited because they're going to go into a place where they think they're going to get used clothes, but they're going to get something new. So your next owner, I'm sure, is going to love you. Anyway, it turned into a whole thing. But anyway, don't make it a thing. Just declutter your life. You don't have to talk to everything on the way out, but it did take a little bit longer. So with that, welcome to the afternoon panel. So we're so glad that you're here. I know, you're probably going, are you ever going to tell me something I can use? So I'm Becca Bowles. I'm the communications director at Gulf Power, which basically means I'm in charge of talking. So, perfect, I'll take it. What do I have to do? Talk? Got it, we'll do that. And so we decided that we would each introduce ourselves. We would tell you what we do, how many jobs we've had since college, and then we're going to pick out, this is I call it my getting to know you jar. So have you ever bonded over like the weirdest, simplest things with somebody? Like you found out, that they had a three-legged cat and you had a three-legged cat, and all of a sudden you were like best friends forever? So the getting to know you jar, when I went to Gulf Power, I didn't know. I knew people, but I met a lot of people I didn't know, and I was trying to remember people and get into and bond with them. So I put together this getting to know you jar, and so I'd go to meetings, and let me just tell you, in a place full of engineers, accountants, and attorneys, they love this idea. So I would go to meetings with my getting to know you jar, and I'd say, hey, I'm just getting to know everybody, and so I thought, do we start the meeting, we'd all pull out a piece of paper and you'd get to read something, and so we'd get to know a lot about each other, and they were so excited to do that, but they did. So anyway, so I thought today that we would do that, as we went around, so you'd get to know something completely random about us. So now I've told you everything I need to know, so now I'm going to open the jar before I send it over to Stacy. All right, let me pick out something. I don't know what it says. I mean, I should. I wrote them all, but okay. Oh, it says I need my glasses. All right. Oh, so if I found $100 in my pocket that I didn't know was there, I would wonder whose pants I had on.
Oh, but
You have your own. You have your own. Oh, never mind.
okay,
Sorry.
got it down. You are a hard act to follow. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stacey Keller Williams. I am with Navy Federal, who is in the house today. Nice. Great. I am the Vice President of Member Experience and Training. And since college, I have had 13 different positions at several different companies. So what else do I need to do? Okay, do I do this now?
No, did I tell you I had 10? Did I say 10?
No, you didn't say.
I had 10, but not 13. 13 is like a lucky number. No, go.
Okay, so here's my question. If I'm on vacation, you can find me in, but please don't look. Yeah, you can find me at the beach, but please don't look.
Me too, I love the beach.
I'll pick this first. Maybe I'll bring some good luck. I didn't bring my own cheering section, but maybe y'all will cheer for me.
Mary Asmar, ladies and gentlemen.
I am Mary Asmar. I am the Human Resources Director at the Lewis Bear Company. I've been there almost 24 years, so I have only had 2 jobs. I was at Baptist Healthcare before that, so you make it like a bad thing to only have 2 jobs, but it's a good thing. So. And my question is...
And if you don't like the question...
I don't like that one.
But I'm pretty sure that's not how the game's played. Look, somebody's over there going, That's right. You can make your own rules.
If a car fits your personality, I should be driving a blank. Well, it would not be the Yukon XL that I currently drive to tote my kids around in. I think it would probably be a Jeep. I've never owned a Jeep, but I have rented a few, and I like that fearless version of my former self with the outdoor air coming in and no care in the world and bad hair, who cares? So.
Now, I just want y'all to know, Mary's our it girl on the panel. She is the person who does alcohol-infused businesses, yes. So just so you know, yes.
If you don't know, Lewis Bear Company is a beer company. So.
That's right.
Budweiser.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aditone Sanders. I work for Members First Credit Union. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development. And from my very first job to the job I have now, I've held 10 positions between 4 jobs. And I know I have my junior league sisters in here. So, my question. If I'm eating food at the fair, I will be standing in the line to get a funnel cake.
A funnel cake! Yes! Yes! It's like the best, really.
Not the fried Oreos?
Oh, the fried Oreos. Oh, yeah, those too. There's nothing like fair food, really.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Longley, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs, and I've had 12 jobs since college. I've been at Cox for 20 years, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. And let me see what my job jar is. Okay, if I have to spend the next 4 hours in a store, at least make sure it's blank. I'm not a big shopper, but if I could go to Lowe's, that would be a great place to get some home improvement items. Or we talked about TJ Maxx is always a favorite.
Yeah, we can't. I cannot bond over Lowe's, but okay.
Okay. But you can get everything for your home there. So
This is true. All right, how many people are going to join her at Lowe's? Let's hear it. You go, girls. You go, girls. That's right. Lowe's is for everybody.
And I just want to give a shout out to my Cox friends. Thank you for joining us here.
Okay, Kristen, since you're over there and come back from Lowe's for just a minute. So, Kristen, I recently went to a conference, and the gentleman there said that long-term career success had less to do with IQ. I sat straight up when he said that. I was like, oh, good. Thank God. He said it has less to do with IQ and more to do with AQ, which he called your adaptability quotient. Can you tell us how being adaptable has helped you in your career?
I love that question, and I'm sure he's writing a great book.
Oh yeah, he totally made a book out of it. He's making millions off of it. So.
Okay, good. So we'll all put that on our book list for next month. But so I've worked at Cox for 21 years now, and it's been a great experience. But I will tell you that the company started way back in, well, I won't tell you when it started, but I started in 1998, and at the time, it was a cable company that offered probably about 40 different channels. And for those of you who really want to take a step backward, you can think of when MTV was launched and video killed the radio star and whatever your favorite music videos are. Jane, I'm sure you have a few from your day. So then, as you can imagine, the company has changed and evolved quite a bit over the years. And thankfully, Al Gore invented the internet. And so now Cox is really more of a broadband provider. And it's not just broadband, it's broadband to facilitate a smart home experience for many of you as our customers, a smart business experience, and certainly telemedicine is something that we're involved in, and there's a lot of different businesses that have evolved through just our one company. So as you can imagine, that required me to change and adapt and really look at what are the skills that I have that regardless of my primary focus, which at the time was communication and marketing and things like that, how do I change and evolve? So it's been a really good experience, and I think for people that work in the technology industry, it's important to think about you can be trained on anything, but the reality is most of the products and services that we all work with are probably going to change every 6 to 9 months. So it's something you need to think about, what's your ability to change, adapt, and really bring leadership to whatever it is you're doing, and then drive whatever goals you're trying to get to. And I think that's really what makes you successful.
And you've had a couple of different jobs in there that you kind of only had to make your way and kind of find your place. Can you talk just a minute about that?
Yeah, so definitely whenever a company changes and evolves based on technological advances, et cetera, that causes the organization to reassess who's doing what and that type of thing. So I'm one of the few people at Cox that's had 3 different severance packages and still works there. And I guess, they think that I can, move the needle on certain products and get things done. So when you have a situation like that, you really have to look at, what are my core skills and where are my abilities to move change? And it really also causes you to address, what are the things that I bring to the organization or that each of you bring to the organization that's kind of your secret sauce. And I think when you look at it that way, you can change and evolve regardless of where you are and where you land. So.
That's great. I know that sometimes change can, it can make us really, really anxious. And I remember when I was little and I was, something bad would happen, my mom was quick to say, Becca, character is built in challenging times. And if we don't have challenging times, you're never going to grow as a person. And so I should relish in those challenges and things like that. And so my lip would quiver, but I go, okay. So Stacy, why don't you tell us a little bit how you feel like your career has changed trajectory or some things, challenges you've faced that have gotten you where you are today?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So thinking back through my career, there definitely have been some of those very challenging situations, and I'll share one with you that at the time, it was one of those life-defining moments. I refer to those as life's crucibles, and it definitely has changed my life for the good. So we're gonna go back to the second week of January 2009. So I think most of everyone in the room knows what was happening out there in the economy in 2008 and 2009. Well, it was a Friday afternoon, and the phones were ringing off the hook. I was working at a very large financial institution here in Pensacola, and the word was out that people were being let go. So that Friday afternoon, 4,000 people who had a job similar to mine were getting phone calls. So I ended up looking at the clock, it's like 5 o'clock, and I haven't gotten the call. So my goodness, did I make the cut? Am I still gonna have this job? And I had been with this company for 9 years, had several different roles, had a wall full of accolades, but it didn't matter because the position was being eliminated. So left work that day. Later that evening, I'm in Walmart. I didn't even tell you guys this part of the story. So I'm in Walmart and I have my BlackBerry and it's sitting there in my purse and I'm going around the aisles. And the next thing I know, out of the corner of my eye, I can see my BlackBerry like going crazy, like all these lights were flashing. And sure enough, when I looked at my BlackBerry, it had been wiped out. All my contacts, my email, everything had been wiped. And I was like, you know what, someday this is gonna be a funny story. But you can only imagine that weekend and the feeling of, oh my goodness, I didn't get the call on Friday, but obviously something's happening. So I did get the call on Monday, and I was offered a severance package. I was also offered an opportunity to stay with that same organization, move back to Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I started with the company, and do something different. But I made the decision to take my severance. And it was a very, very scary time. I mean, think about it. There was not a lot happening anywhere out there in the entire country, especially Pensacola, Florida. So I took the severance package, but what's really interesting, and I started thinking about, okay, what are my opportunities? What am I gonna do? I was also part of Leadership Pensacola class of 2009. And there were 49 other folks in that class who just became this amazing support group for me. And they were all talking among themselves like, oh my goodness, is there an opportunity at our company to help Stacy? And sure enough, one of my classmates, my cohort mates, Gerald Hall, who worked for Landrum, said, Stacy, we have something. We have an opportunity. So Landrum was there to pick me up, to give me this opportunity. And during that time that I was there for 10 months, I continued to look for opportunities to get back into the financial industry. And I didn't even really think about it, but here I've been a Navy Federal member for 28 years. I had my mortgage, my car, my credit card, all with Navy Federal. And even when I was with this other financial institution where I was in leadership, and people asked me like, Stacy, when are you gonna get rid of those credit union accounts and move everything here? I was like, never. That's my credit union. But I just never really thought about it being a career. I mean, I lived in Navarre. I knew like Navy Federal had a presence, but Navarre and Beulah are like a world apart. I had no idea. So it was amazing that I just happened to look at the opportunities that were there on the website, and sure enough, there was an opportunity for a regional manager for the Gulf Coast over the branches based in Pensacola, Florida. I put in my resume, it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, and the other part about this story is the vice president actually was closing the package on Wednesday before Thanksgiving, was gonna close the package, and he went to the recruiter and said, keep it open over the weekend. I wanna see what comes through. My resume, my application went in that Friday night. I got the call from the recruiter the following Monday and started with Navy Federal in January of 2010. So my story, what I want to share to all of you is that for every door that closes, a bigger and better one opens, and that's absolutely what Navy Federal has been for me.
Wow. I got chills. I mean, that is a great story, and I will also say that there are times where something terrible happens, and I do that. I say, okay, this is going to be really funny one day. Not maybe today, but one day I'm going to tell a story and it's going to be really, really funny. It's usually not in the next 24 to 48 hours, but I mean, I even shuddered when you said your phone was wiped out because that would be terrible. So thinking about adaptability, and really, I mean, both of these stories, you're looking at people that had to stop and adapt, right? They had to make a shift and they had to adapt and learn to do things different. I'd like to get to Adetone. So Adetone, you grew up in Nigeria. So tell us first how you came from growing up in Nigeria to Pensacola, Florida.
Absolutely. So I was, my parents are first generation, they're Nigerians, and they came to the States to go to college. And of course, so I was born in Chicago, but then they always had plans to go back to Nigeria. So at the age of 6, they decided to move back to Nigeria, and so therefore I was raised in Nigeria. So I finished, did all my elementary schooling, middle school, high school in Nigeria. And then, as they did, came to the States for college. They decided they wanted to send me to the States for college. So that's how I ended up in Pensacola, Florida, at University of West Florida. Go Argos. So yeah, I was one of those kids. I think when I came to UWF 1990, maybe there were 2 other Africans. And so we just kind of formed our own little tribe. And, I'd go to class. And, back then, they made you stand up first day of class and you had to introduce yourself. And at first I'd get nervous, like, oh, here we go again. I've got an accent. I've got this long name. And so, I got kind of used to doing that. And I would just, stand up and, okay, I'm Adetone Ogundehin at the time. And the whole class would go, what? And then I'd say it again. And of course, I had a much stronger accent. So, after living here 20 years, you kind of assimilate to the Pensacola accent. But yeah, I would get up and say my full name. And then I just said, you know what? Own it. So I started saying my name with pride. In fact, people that would meet me could tell you, they could recite my whole name, Adetone Omolara Ogundehin. And I'm like, that's right, because when I come here, I have to learn your name, so absolutely, learn mine. And then I'd have a few people go, well, do you have a nickname? And even though I did, I was like, nope, it's Adetone, And so it became easy and it just rolled off your tongue. But, just to carry that whole adaptability thing from college to the workplace, especially in today's time, with global organizations and everyone working, you work from home, you're talking to someone who lives in China or someone who's in California. Everyone has a different cultural background, maybe a different accent. It doesn't discount what they bring to the table. Someone may have a name that you've never heard of, or their accent may be slightly different from yours. It doesn't take away from what they bring to the table. And I have to, when you look at the other end of the spectrum, as the person who has the different cultural background, I have to realize that some gestures that maybe in my culture is completely acceptable and considered playful could be offensive to someone here. I had to learn how to kind of tame my excitement because I get loud and then people go, why is she yelling at me, I had to learn to kind of hone that and kind of tame it down a bit and just adapt. And the proverb for me and a lot of probably second-generation immigrants or people who grew up in another country and move here is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Now that doesn't mean that I forget who I am. It just means that I try to adapt to the surrounding that I'm in, and I try to acknowledge that, they're different, I'm different, be a little more open-minded, and be accepting. If someone has a tough accent, what do? I just make myself listen a little harder, and there's value in what they have to say. So that's how I deal with cultural and language differences.
That's great. Thank you very much. So Adetone's our person. We feel cooler because we've been hanging out with her, just so you know. We have one on our panel, too. I'm just letting you know. So Mary, speaking of adapting, you, working with the Lewis Bear Company, you're pretty much in what I would call like a male-dominated industry and certainly a corporation. So I think sometimes, sometimes you might be the only female voice at the table or at the table. So kind of tell us about how that works for you and how you've adapted.
Okay. It is a male-dominated industry. For one, cases of beer are kind of heavy, so that's usually male salesmen and delivery drivers and helpers and things like that. So when I came to the Lewis Bear Company, there were 10 women. I think we're up to 20-something now. And I came over as the Human Resources Director, and what I found is that you hear so much about trying to have a seat at the table and trying to fit in, with that environment, but quite frankly, I didn't want to be a dude or a guy or, one of the men that ran the company. I wasn't like Katie. I didn't own the company. So if for those undervalued folks that are females, in her case, she could just take care of that. But when you're one of the team, you have to work within those confines. And quite frankly, I embraced my feminine qualities because there were so many men around in the executive management team that I felt like they needed that person on the team who was more compassionate, the person who might be the conscience of the organization. And being the HR manager, sometimes I'm the employee advocate. And I think for those of us that are women in the room, particularly those of us that are moms, we have sort of absorbed that role or taken on that role over time to be the approachable one, be the one that's more human, the one that's more understanding. And so I think those feminine qualities are good, and it's okay to show those. I don't mean cry or be weak or any of those things that we tend to do when we're in a difficult position. But I think it's fine to embrace who we are as women and contribute that and not feel like you have to stick to stereotypical roles, but be able to offer something to the rest of the team, and when it is a male-dominated environment. And I will contrast that with coming from Baptist Healthcare, being a female, predominantly probably 80% women in patient care and healthcare at the time, and then coming over to a male-dominated environment. It was quite an awakening for me, but being in human resources, it was interesting because a lot of the issues that you have with women are things that have to do with interacting with others. Sometimes it's personality conflicts, sometimes it's absenteeism because they're taking care of sick children or whatever the case may be. Over in the beer industry and in a male-dominated workforce, it's very different. Guys don't get in trouble very often, but when they do, it's a lot bigger. It's things like theft or violence or other types of things. So from an HR standpoint, it's a very different environment, a different workforce. But quite frankly, I like it. It's refreshing to be one of few women in the organization. And it's a great company filled with long-term employees. We don't have much turnover in our management staff. It is a family-owned business that's steeped in tradition and history, and so I think it blends well to have some females on the management team that they did not have before I got there. So hopefully I'm contributing in a positive way being a female in that environment.
Well, and I think you're right, because I think it sounds like to me that you've almost been able to shape the culture in the workforce based upon your influence and, really kind of help to build the culture that you want within within where you're working. And I think that's one thing that, sometimes people say, oh, the morale's bad. You have to decide what you can do to make your workplace and surroundings better. You have to decide what you can bring. And the minute you think that you don't contribute, and the minute you think that you don't make a difference, you don't. Because you absolutely can. You can bring value and much farther than whatever position that you own. And I've been in a business where maybe the corporate culture may have felt like one thing, but I thought, within my workplace culture, the part I can control, it's gonna feel like something else. And I think that it's important for you to think about what is the culture we want to have and how can I contribute and help make it better. So I think it sounds to me like what you brought to the Lewis Bear Company was just, like you said, a more approachable and really be able to kind of extend that family culture in a very great way.
Yeah, and I can add just a little bit to that. Because we were founded in 1876, so we are a very old company, and Anheuser-Busch was founded in 1876, and that's the beer that we distribute. So it is about tradition. It is about relationships. Making friends is our business is Anheuser-Busch's motto. And so we are not about change. We don't have product change like you might experience at Gulf or at Cox. We have new beers that come out and new products that we offer, but the way we sell our beer and take it to market remains mostly the same. So while we're family-owned and we have that tradition and stability, the same goes with what we sell. So we are not trying to reinvent the wheel in any way. So part of my job is to maintain that corporate culture and that continuity and stability, in our family of employees.
That's great. So when we think about branding, so sometimes you want to work someplace where you brand well. I remember when I went to Gulf Power, I sat in front of the president, and he says, so why do you want to work at Gulf Power? And I said, well, I think I brand well with Gulf Power. I think the things that Gulf Power cares about and the way they care about their people and their community, those are things that I'm passionate about. That I'm passionate about making my community a better place. And I like the way Gulf Power does it, and I want to be a part of that. So when you think about the importance, Stacy, when you think about the importance of values and how you might think about, does that make a difference about where you decide to go to work, do you think?
Personally, yes, I think so. I mean, these conversations that we're having about corporate culture and values really are just completely aligned and go together. So, for example, working at Navy Federal, we are an 86-year-old company. Our culture is something that is very important to us, something that we want to maintain, sustain, and protect. So we are very much aware that when we're hiring someone, we are hiring for that cultural fit. So as someone who is looking for an opportunity to go work, and I know many in the audience are probably getting to that point where if you're graduating, you're thinking about, what's my next step? What type of organization do I want to work for? I think it is really important that you do that inner territory work, like you take a look inside yourself. Going back to what Emily talked about this morning, figuring out what type of life it is that you want to lead so that you are very close and understand what your values are. And then if you can match that up to an organization, I guarantee you that is to me, that's like a match made in heaven, because then you're working for an organization that supports your values, aligns with your values, and you won't be asked to do something that you don't really believe in. And I think it's really important too for people to have a sense of purpose when it comes to the work that they do. So for example, at Navy Federal, I'm part of the contact center. We have folks who answer the phone every day, and they answer a lot of calls. I'm talking 35 million calls last year in the contact center. And if that's all you thought about, oh, I'm here to answer the phone, well, that might not be very purposeful. But if you really think, you know what, I'm here to actually serve our members and make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve and that we take care of, then it has a completely different meaning and it becomes something much larger than yourself. So when you can attach those values to the values of the organization, I think it makes for a much more satisfying career.
Absolutely, and I think, that's something we all we want to do purposeful work, and it's important to find purpose in your work. So I'm going to take a second to see if you have any questions before I go on. So if you have any questions from the audience, you get to walk all the way up the aisle and hope the microphone is somewhere close to your mouth. Yeah, exactly. I know, it never is. The microphone always sits me right here.
Hi, I am Nina. I am in the MBA program. I'm from Slovakia, so just listen a little closer. My question is, what advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
So who wants what advice? Adatone, you're going to take what advice do you give to someone leadership first time?
This is the word that I want you to remember. Dazzle. Yes, and I'm going to expound on that. Dazzle. When I say dazzle, first of all, let them know what your personal brand is. Differentiate yourself. Make it obvious what qualities you bring to the table. Work ethic. No one can argue with your work ethic. Come to work early. Be the last to leave. Do the very best at everything that you do. Be a team player. Don't shy away from making other people shine. Everyone has their special gifts and talents. It's okay to recognize someone else's gift because it doesn't take anything away from you. So my advice would just be do the very best at everything that you do. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. No one's perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes, and you know what I do? I own them. And I just say, you know what, I could have done that better. And you just learn from it. And, just go extra above and beyond. It gets noticed, I promise you. It may not happen right away, but if you have those leadership qualities and you make it show, there's going to be a place for you. There's going to be a place for you.
Can I add in something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
we got a whole row. That was such a good question. We got like a row of people ready to talk.
So I'm going to take it from a different lens. So the people that you're actually leading. So when you think about as a first-time leader, what are those actions that I need to demonstrate as a leader? So first and foremost, be a great listener. I mean, that above anything else, and be authentic. So, don't try to impress the people that you're leading. Get to know them, build relationships, be very authentic, listen, let them know that you are there for them. I mean, to me, that is just absolutely invaluable. Being that servant leader where you're putting their concerns, how you can help support to get them where they want to go, because I guarantee you this, if you put your focus on getting those who work with you where they want to go, it's automatically going to happen for you.
Kristen?
Yeah, I was going to echo the same thing. The more you can be a servant leader, the more you build trusting teams. And I think that's so key, especially when you're new as a leader, because I think as a group, you may not always know the functional task that you're assigned to, but if you have trust and a great understanding within your team, you can do about anything. So I think serving your teammates is so critically important.
And I think when you sitting down and listening, you want to know where your team, what they want, where they want to go. You want to know where they want to develop to, because you're part of their story of getting them to where they want to go and be. And you will never be any stronger than your team. So everything you do to invest back into your people and into their success, and if that means getting them the training they need, helping them chart their career path, making sure they understand their expectations of the job, it really is. The minute you're a leader, it is never again about you, and it shouldn't be. It is all about your people, and because that really is the bottom line. So, great question. Okay, any other question? Oh, we got one. It's working now.
Hi, I'm Lily. I'm doing the MBA as well here. I have a question about assertiveness. How important has assertiveness been in becoming the leader, and how have you developed this skill?
So we talked a little bit about assertiveness earlier, because I think we talked about, can you be assertive and still be a team player? Who wants to talk about that? Go ahead, Adaptable. Take it, girl.
I think it's a lot for me. It's
Be assertive.
I am. It's a lot easier to be assertive if you're supportive. You don't feel like you're trying to be the door, because, I don't know, I've been in circles where everyone's just kind of shying, But I think if you can be a supportive person, it's easier to stand out without getting backlash from the team. That's what's worked for me.
That's really good. So it's easier to be assertive if you're supportive. I'd write that one down. That's really, really good.
And I will say, I probably, for those who know me and have seen, I am more assertive when I'm supporting my people, because the mama bear comes out, and it's about how do you protect, how do you help people along, how do you get them where they want to go, how do you knock down obstacles that are in their way. That's probably when I become more assertive than if it's something that, say, it's just a personal item on my agenda. So, and again, to your point, that's when it's more readily accepted, because people get it. They know that you're doing it for the right reasons.
I think it goes back to what we are all saying up here. It's about being your true self. It's about being honest and straightforward. Assertiveness is not at all about being aggressive, but many of us do speak our mind. And there's a way to do that when you are trying to bring up the whole team. I know for my staff, it's about them developing. Some of them are at the beginning of their careers, and it's about enabling them to be their best self, to give them learning opportunities. To, when you explain a small task, give them the big picture as to how that small task fits in. And I don't know if that directly answers the question, but I think what we're trying to say here is being assertive doesn't mean that you're trying to speak up and be seen or anything like that at all. It's really about creating power and empowerment among your team, and you will eventually bubble up as a leader because you're all trying to reach that common goal.
We talked earlier about the fact that the one thing that, the thing that makes me so unhappy with myself is if I didn't speak up for something I knew it should be done differently, or if I kind of go against my intuition on something, and then it comes back, and the thing that I thought would happen, I just really want to beat myself up because I'm like, Becca, everything told you to do something and you set back. And that's the worst. I mean, things happen that I didn't see coming, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't see it coming. But when I knew it at the time and I didn't act on it, or I didn't do it differently, and then it comes back to me, those are very hard pills to swallow. And I know every one of you have had that happen where you kind of you went against your gut, or you didn't follow through on your gut, and then it came back not the way you had hoped. And you're like, I knew it at the time and I could have prevented it. So, I think those are things, you just need to be assertive, and then you own it. So, any other questions? Come on up.
Hello, I'm Chidi Kenakalu. Question for all of you. As a successful leader, at what point does your patience with your workers become counterproductive?
I know this one. I will tell you this, at the point that it starts to hurt the team. So you can work with people, but at some point, if someone not doing their job means someone else is doing their job too, or having to pick it up because they're not doing their job right, you are doing nobody any favors for letting that continue. So it will eventually eat through your whole team. So at first, everybody wants to be patient. We want to give people an opportunity to do well, and we want to give them what they need to do well. But at some point, if they can't get there, and someone else is having to pick it up for them, it's not good for the team. And as a leader, you're not doing your job by letting that continue to happen.
And I think the 5 dysfunctions of a team, that book speaks to that example exactly. So you have to look out for not only being patient with the employee that may be trying to learn something or grow or development, in their development, but you also have to look out for the good of the team. So well said, Becca.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have some questions from oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Hello.
Hi.
Be assertive. Speak up. No. I'm sorry.
no,
That was totally on me.
No, that's fine. So my question is about your gut, actually. Just sitting back and hearing the different speakers throughout the day, there has been a lot of talk about listening to your gut and listening to your instincts to find your direction and happiness or your purpose. How much of your life and your career development have you listened to your gut, and how much of that your development can you attribute to listening to others? I'll let you answer.
That's a great question.
I can take that one.
Go, Kristen.
So I'll start. I think that you should always listen to your gut because that's your inner voice, right? But I also feel like it's critically important for everyone in here to have what you would refer to as a board of directors. And these are the people, and I think Emily spoke to this morning, these are the people that are either going to give you honest feedback, they'll help you look at things from multiple directions, and I know this is just something that's so important in everyone's walk, whether it's in a corporate environment or as an entrepreneur. So I would encourage, whenever you're thinking about a career level decision, to get others to weigh in on it, because you may not always be thinking about it from all the right angles. So.
And I'll just add, definitely when I think back through my career, I have leveraged that inner voice, that instinct in many, many, many decisions. But I will also say, as an opportunity to stretch and grow, it's also really good to question that instinct, because we have sometimes this unconscious bias for things, right? So that instinct, that gut could be telling you one thing. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back and taking time to really explore the other alternative and not just necessarily going with your gut. So I think, yes, absolutely, it has served me well, but as I continue to grow in my own development, I question more and more of that.
And I agree. And unconscious bias is real. And it's very important to be aware and do it and double check yourself and get, like you said, others' opinions. I think it's good to get a lot of opinions or a lot of information as you make decisions, especially big ones. Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I should preface this question by saying I worked for Becca for 2 years, so.
Thank you very much. You can sit down now.
That's part of where this question has come from, because part of what I learned from you through observation, I would love to hear your take on it and your advice to everyone. And going back to that question of assertiveness, and I know when it's your team, it is a lot easier to advocate for what you need. But I learned from you a lot through observation, watching how to negotiate those really tough conversations without making anyone feel like a loser. So this is a question first for you and then the rest of the panel of what advice do you have for negotiating those conversations where maybe it isn't about your team, it's more about things like your salary or your job and what you need as a professional, or for your company in a community partnership or agreement of getting to that ground of what works for you, but also being a good partner in that and not creating enemies in that process, if you will.
Rebecca, you want the jar?
First of all, I have to tell you, Melissa Puckett and I work together, and she is one of the most talented people I know. She's an incredible, not just a great graphic artist, but she really thinks through a million things, and she's a great editor too, because when I used to do Bella Magazine, Melissa used to edit me, and I always sounded so much better when she handed it back. I was like, is that what I said? That is awesome. So anyway, I appreciate that. I think there was a lot of questions there. I think the art of negotiation and working to it started with how do you have tough conversations, and they're all different kinds of tough conversations that we have to have. If I'm having a tough conversation with an employee, I usually like to ask them a lot of questions and let them take me where I want to, let them go where I want them to go. So, really ask them questions and help them get to what we're talking about, and then asking them questions to help them to get to solutions, and then asking them a question about when they think they can deliver on that. So by the time they've left, they've identified the problem, they've identified the solution, and they've identified the time limit of which they're going to fix it, and then we've agreed upon it. And everything we agreed upon it, they actually were the ones who came up with the plan. And I always think that people become more invested in what they actually plan and do. As far as other things like negotiating salaries and I think always, whatever you do, you need to build your case, and you need to be able to unemotionally lay something out that is very clear and specific of why you want to do it, what the outcomes are going to be, why you think it's important, and then if there is dollars connected to that, why those dollars are going to be well spent. And in the end, whatever dollars anyone is looking to invest, whether you might be investing in the community or you're going to invest them into a person or whatever, everyone wants to see what that return on investment is. And if it's investing dollars into a community for something, they're wanting it to be better on the other side, and they're looking for a return on investment, not just a monetary return, but that the community or that organization or the people that organization has helped, that you've made a change. And if they're investing in a person, again, you want to know what you're going to get. And I think you just got to be able to lay it out as you work and give that information. It's what's worked for me.
Well, the first thought came to mind is you don't go with your gut at this point, you suppress. If you've got to have a difficult conversation with someone, suppress, think about it, sleep on it. But at the same time, don't procrastinate on that conversation, because it becomes more and more difficult over time. In my role, hiring and firing, I'm interviewing people that I know might not be qualified for the job and aren't going to be my ultimate selection. At the same time, when I'm having this conversation where someone's going to be discharged, I want to leave both of those people with their integrity, and I want them to feel good about themselves just like they did before they walked in the room. So like in hiring and interview settings, a lot of times I'll explore, all of their opportunities, not just this job that we're talking about, but what are they ultimately looking for? What industry, what have they already looked at? What other positions are they considering? And just kind of help them talk through that. At the same time, when you're discharging somebody, a lot of times they already know it's coming. It's not a surprise. Usually that you are taking a burden off of them because they're probably as miserable as they're making everyone else. They know that they're either not living up to it or they were never a good fit to begin with. And so eventually you're going to release them back to that workforce where they can find a better opportunity for them in a better situation, like you've heard Stacy talk about today. So don't procrastinate on those. Have those straightforward conversations, but you don't have to beat the person down to tell them why you're about to discharge them. Yes, there's some legal things that you have to tell them to make sure you documented it and you covered your bases. But at the same time, you want to free them up to be their best self at another job, and you can tell them what they did good at, and all of those things can leave not only a positive feeling for them, but it also doesn't burn that bridge. It doesn't leave your company in a bad light. I think that, as for me, as a human resource manager, I hate they think, oh, the hatchet woman, but no one sees me that way. I'll run into people's store, oh, you fired me 3 years ago, thanks, it was the greatest thing ever happened. So now I'm such and such. Now I work at Gulf Power. So you do have one of our old salesmen. So anyway, that's my thought on that.
Okay, we're going to go the speed round. Okay, so here are the speed round of questions. So first one up gets it, and then we're going to the next question. Are you ready? What are some of the hardest situations you've been through to get where you are today?
Oh, is that for me?
It's for the first person. It's a speed round. You got to buzz in.
All right, for me, let's see, my first professional job was at a company. It was kind of like an early tech company. Antonia and I worked there. Antonia, are you in here still? Yes. It was kind of like a little microcosm of Zappos. Does anyone know about Zappos culture? Kind of like that clan culture, anything goes, bring your pets to work. My kids were dropped off at my job. I mean, it was the best place to work. Laid back, coming in shorts if you wanted to, as long as you did your job and you had a great attitude. So of course, worked there for about 7 years, and then it was a mortgage credit reporting agency that kind of started suffering with the whole mortgage industry turnover in 2008. So I had to leave there to go to another institution, and I went to a financial institution that's more of that hierarchy, corporate culture where you had policies and procedures in place. There was like low tolerance for error. You had to follow processes, which is what's helped them stay successful and be around for this long. But it was hard making that transition, going from a early tech, anything goes place to a more structured culture, corporate culture, but I had to adapt and get on board, and I learned a lot from there, and I'm still there, and I'm thankful for them.
And you left your poodle at home? Yeah. Okay. How do you respond if you realize you made a critical error?
You just fess up. That's the first thing. You've got to acknowledge it and accept the fact that you made a mistake. I don't think there's any other way.
And then add processes to prevent it for the next time.
Absolutely.
That's exactly
Come up
right.
with the solution, but yes.
And usually, once you fess up and say, and you got to own it. And just so you know, if you're in leadership, you own it for the entire team. You don't point to anybody else, it's yours. You own it, and then the best way to own it is to tell them exactly what you're doing so it doesn't happen again. So, excellent. Okay. Where does your confidence stem from, and how do you maintain it? Who's buzzing in?
I was just going to say, it's those that we work with help us feel good about what we're all doing in that common good, and we all build each other up. I know certainly for the females that I work with, whether it be in volunteer organizations or in my real job, I think that's where the confidence comes from. You get that feedback, and you want to do better the next time around for the next person. It just keeps growing.
And I don't know that I always feel confident. Sometimes I have to talk myself into it a little bit. Y'all ever feel that way?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going into the room. I'm not sure I even belong, but I'm going to walk in as if I do.
I would just add that I don't know if you're familiar with the book Start With Your Why. And I think to what Emily's talked about this morning, if you think about what's your why, that does help you with your confidence. Why am I doing this? Why is this going to make a difference? Why is this going to move change, either at work or in the community? And that does help me. And I think all of us have to draw from that. What's our purpose?
What is the biggest challenge facing the future generation of leaders? Do you have any advice for them to overcome those challenges? I mean, when I think about the future generation of leaders, I think sometimes the biggest challenge can be that technology has kept us from having conversations. And we no longer, for example, we used to have a rule that if you were sick, you had to call in and talk to someone to tell them you're sick, okay? I used to think, do I even sound sick enough to make this call? Really. And then I would think, okay, sound really weak. Hello? Seriously. I didn't call in sick a lot, but these are the conversations. And there were days I thought, you know what? I can't make the call. I'm going in. Well, now somebody's texting me to tell me they don't feel well. And let me just tell you, you don't even have to sound sick to text somebody and tell you don't feel well. So, but at the same time, I do believe that you can never, the value of a face-to-face conversation can never be underrated. And your ability to look someone in the eye and have a face-to-face conversation is critical. And you have to be able to get up from your desk and go and talk to people and connect with people and get invested with people. And, even if you're Skyping because you work remotely, but you have to be able to have conversations. And I think it's really, really important as you work on your skills is just really to work on your interpersonal skills. I think that can become a real challenge. I will also tell you that I had a boss once that proximity made him nicer. You know him. So anyway, he was one of those, and let me tell you this, I went from him being like the person I feared the most to one of my very favorite people. But from a distance, he was one of those people, if he didn't like something, he would shoot off an email, and it could be really, really rough, and then I would shoot off an email back, and he'd shoot, and one day I realized that the best thing I could do is get up and go have a conversation. And everything changed because it is much more difficult to be mad and angry close to somebody, right? From a distance, I can tell you off, I can talk to somebody on the phone, whatever. But when I'm sitting by you, now I've got to look you in the eye, I've got to get to know you. And so your ability to go in, especially if someone's unhappy with you, and go have a conversation and have a close proximity, we're going to go talk this thing out, is I think critical, and I think it's critical for leaders. So that would be one thing if I thought of a challenge. Anything else you can think of as far as?
Well, I just think of how technology has helped us solve so many problems really quickly. So you can ask Alexa or Google or whatever device really simple questions. And so I think about some of the generational differences of, when some of us were in school, we would walk across, through 2 feet of snow and to the library, and so it's a little bit different to get to solutions quicker. So I think the expectation is that the work product will be even better. So that's just something to think about too. We have so many resources now that help us get to, so that's both a blessing and a curse. So.
Okay, how would you describe your leadership style and how did you develop it?
Collaborative.
Okay. Ooh, that was good. One word. That's good. Collaborative.
I just always feel like the best answer is typically the one that a lot of people have provided input on. And, as you go through your leadership walk, that you don't have all the answers. So the more you can pull in really smart people, the better off we'll all be. That's my perspective.
Absolutely. You can never have too many thinkers in the room. Yeah. Okay. Particularly where gender inequality exists, how do you address or raise an issue with a colleague or supervisor in a respectful manner while still reinforcing your viewpoint? Particularly where gender inequality exists. How do you address or raise an issue with a colleague or supervisor in a respectful manner where still reinforcing your viewpoint?
I'll take that one. Reluctantly.
Thank you, Adaptable.
Just, I guess, when I first started at Members First, and of course, over time, I got promoted to the leadership team, and you don't get to that level just kind of being mousy. You kind of, you're assertive and you hold your own. And so the VP of IT, which I told him I was going to give this example if it came up, so I'm safe. We butted heads a lot. I mean, we would go at it, and then finally, I just realized we're not going to get anywhere like this. So I decided to call a one-on-one, and we actually had a heart-to-heart. And what I did in that moment was just listen to him, listen to where he was coming from, and then you realize you're both just passionate about what you're trying to accomplish, and you can always meet in the middle. And we are now BFFs. Imagine that. Just listening, talking, being respectful. Don't try to embarrass the other person. Have a one-on-one with them, really hear them out, see where they're coming from. You can get to the same place. We have different methods, but working together, we meet in the middle. And that's what I would say.
Very good. I do want to go really quickly past the workplace. And the first panel talked about giving back to the community. And Mary, I want to circle back around because I know that you're very involved in impact. And the cool thing about impact, it's a bunch of women coming together to make a significant difference in our community. Can you tell us about the importance of maybe finding a passion or matching up that, that as when you think about your career, you think of it beyond the workplace?
Great question, Becca. I think for all of us, we should take advantage of opportunities in our community to volunteer or get involved in organizations that we believe in the cause. Impact 100 has over 1,000 women here in Pensacola that are all working together to give out $100,000 grants to our nonprofits. And because we're all volunteers, it's almost like a practice ground as opposed to your paying job, where you get to work with other people on a team. You see different people's skill sets. You see leaders emerge. You see all of these opportunities to sort of try your hand at something that's not part of your real job. So it's a nice outlet, not only for you to grow as a person, but also to give back to the community. I think for me, many of my greatest learning experiences have been through community organizations, serving on boards with our nonprofits locally. I've been involved with United Way for many years. And also any other organizations like Sertomas and Rotaries and all of these. You learn about how other people work. You certainly learn about other industries that you're not involved in. You learn about what the bankers are doing and what patient care looks like, because it's not like the beer business. So I think getting involved in your community for whatever reasons first motivate you to, I think the rewards and the benefits are much greater than you would ever anticipate. So certainly you college students coming out, I would encourage you to get involved. I guarantee at least one of your jobs in life is going to come from someone you met in one of those organizations that you were involved in, because you're working side by side with other community volunteers. And hopefully no one's going to get fired in that environment, and you're all going to learn and grow for a cause that's near and dear to your heart, and you're serving the community at the same time. So.
Absolutely, and whatever you might be passionate about, the first thing you do is find a way to volunteer, and then your volunteerism may end up being a board seat or something else. And so I think it's so very important to be giving back, and it does. It broadens your circle of people, of influence, and certainly giving back to the community. I'd like to kind of round up a little bit just on women supporting women. So I think sometimes we get kind of a bad rap, right? So there's like the Mean Girls Club that you see on TV, and then there are all those housewife shows, which I totally don't understand, because I don't understand women who get along so poorly wanting to be together so much. And so I don't understand that. But it makes this thing that thinks, if women get together, it's going to be, it has this perception that we don't get along and that we fight and that we're competitive against each other and we're backstabbers. And really, I have found nothing to be further from the truth as far as really the importance of supporting each other and making sure that when one woman does well, I kind of feel like we all do well, right? It doesn't mean that takes anything away from you. You were excited for others. So I'd like to just talk a minute about the importance of supporting other women and maybe some of the things that you may be doing in your own workplace or otherwise that helps build that community.
Looking at me. So I'm so thankful to have a lot of my Cox coworkers here. And we share a lot, and we also help build each other up in terms of our development plans, because we're all working on something, right? So I think that's one way that we've been really successful in terms of making sure everyone's growing, kind of lifting everyone up. But I know just in community work, I know Mary and Adaptone from various volunteer opportunities, and it's been a great way to not only get to know other people, but to really understand other people's strengths and what they really bring to the community, and how we can really move the needle that way.
And something else to keep in mind, if you are working with a colleague and there is something there, right? This person maybe is not as supportive as you would like that person to be. Always remember, like, everybody has a story, right? And we may not know exactly what's happening in that person's life, and they may be very insecure about things. So this is their way of feeling better about themselves. I mean, it all starts with building a relationship and asking questions. And you may have someone who does come across as not supportive and kind of bullish, but you know what? You can break down that barrier just by having a conversation. And just remember, everybody has a story. You don't know what's happening in that person's life. So keep that very open mind. And then the next thing you know, just by lending your support, that person could be completely different going forward.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I was just going to add that, rising tide floats all boats, and together we are better. So collectively, we can accomplish so much more than we can individually. No one in this room has all the skill sets needed to accomplish any particular goal, except for maybe that entrepreneurial team right there. They do it all by themselves. The rest of us are the big corporations, and we do have the supplies in the closet and the tech guy down the hall. But so that's really nice. But truly, with a group, whether it be a group of women or a team, whichever way you're working, you can accomplish so much more collectively, and it's overwhelming to think that any one of us has to do something all on our own and figure out how to do it. They've done that too. But the rest of us have that ability to join forces with others, and we do lift each other up in the process because we're so relieved that somebody else has that talent or that skill that we don't possess. But we do learn a little bit about it from the other person. So collectively, we are so much stronger, and I think you should take advantage of your friendship networks, your work networks, your community networks, and learn and grow with those.
Adaptable?
Oh yeah, I always, this saying, iron sharpens iron. I mean, we all have strengths, we all have special gifts. I have my thing. I keep myself surrounded with women who are encouragers, who are not afraid to learn. There's always something to learn from someone, and as you were saying, everyone has their story, and just don't take things so personally, I've dealt with some difficult people, and somehow we end up resolving it. I don't know what it is, but you just don't focus on the negative. Don't take things personally. Look for any opportunity to learn from one another. Compliment each other. I am not afraid to compliment. I mean, that's what I do. So I think there's a long way to go with that.
Thank you. Well, let me tell you this. Y'all have done a great job supporting us up here, and so we very much appreciate that. Just like the other panel said, I think any of us would love to get to meet anybody. If someone said something, if you're a Lowe's shopper and you need to catch up with Kristen, that may be what you bond over. But, mentorship is very important, and it's really important, again, that we just work and support each other, and because we are better together. So thanks for supporting us up here, and we appreciate it.